Hi and welcome to PolyOriginals with Fiona Abel-Smith. Today we're going to do a fun little cane with a single, fairly simple skinner blend, but I'm going to show you how we're going to insert some white stripes, because sometimes when the skinner blends get going the white tends to disappear, so I'm going to introduce some additional little white spots. This is actually the same cane, and what I'm going to do is to show you how this single cane can actually produce 6 different patterns, all by changing it at a particular point at which you start to put it together. And I'll come on to that as we go on. So the equipment we're going to need for today's project is fairly standard. A polymer clay blade, I often refer to these as tissue blades, craft knife, some form of knitting needle, or this is actually a cable needle, the shorter ones, just something with a fairly blunt end so that we can smooth cane slices together, a small roller. A smoothing tool is quite handy. If you don't have one of these, this is a stainless steel soap, and I'll put a link as to where to find them in the details below the video. To be honest, tip of your finger will do, or the side of your roller will do. But if you have one of these, it's quite handy to use. You're going to need a small sheet of something just to manoeuvre your clay slices on. This is actually baking parchment. I find it very useful to work on, but a sheet of greaseproof or tracing or wax paper will do, and a separate sheet which we're going to put on top of the clay to smooth over. And again, I'm actually using wax paper, but greaseproof paper or baking sheet, baking parchment, all of which will work. Other than that, you will of course need a pasta machine dedicated to polymer clay use, and it's always handy to have some tissues and wet wipes just to keep your equipment and hands clean as we go. So that's it, that's all we need. So let's move on to the clay we're going to use. So for today's project I'm using Fimo Soft, but all brands of known polymer clay will work well for this technique. And I'm using lilac, plum, raspberry and white, and I've got 1/2 ounce or 14 grams of each of the colours, and these coloured ones I've split, so I've got 3/4 and 1/4, and I'm going to condition those in their separate blocks, and the white I've split into half, and again I'm going to condition those in the separate blocks. And for today's project it works well if you've got a very light colour, a medium colour and a dark colour, because you want that nice contrast when we're putting the cane together. So I'm going to condition all of these colours separately, starting with the white and then working up to the darker colours, and I'm going to put them all through on setting number 3 of my pasta machine. And on my pasta machine, setting 0 is thick and setting 9 is thin. For anyone who's not sure how or why we condition polymer clay, then I do have a video showing some details and some hints and tips on how to condition clay quickly, and I'll put a link to that in the video description below. So I'll get all my clay conditioned and I'll bring it back when I've got it all done on setting number 3. So here are my blocks of clay, all nicely conditioned, and the 3 small pieces and one of the whites I'm going to take and put on one side just for now. So I'm going to put all these colours together in skinner blend. The 2 pieces that go on the end I've put roughly into rectangular shapes, and the pieces that are going to go in the middle are slightly longer. It'll make sense when I start to put them together in a second. If you're not sure about skinner blends, then as with the conditioning clay, I do have a video on skinner blends and how to do them with a few hints and tips and techniques, and I will put a link to that video in the video description below this one. So for now, what we're going to do is we're going to cut diagonally through the 2 end pieces, put them on top of each other, so I've actually got 2 layers of this. The dark colour, the purple, is going to go in the middle, and that's something to remember for this one. You have your lighter colours on the end and the darker colour in the middle, and they're going to fit together like that. And then this white, I just want a little bit of the white in between the other 2 colours just to help transition it slightly. So I've cut that into 4, because obviously I'm going to need 2 layers of this, the same as with the other colours. I'm going to put it together, sandwiching the colours with a strip of white in between. And I want just a very rough oblong, so what I will do is I'll just take off a little bit of the excess white And you can give this a roll if you want, just to help put all those colours together. But what we're going to do is we're going to take half of it up, fold it over, and now we're going to put it back through the pasta machine, fold first, and because we've got 4 layers, I'm going to go to a thicker setting on my pasta machine. So I'm now going to move up to setting number 2 on my pasta machine. And what we're going to do is we're going to constantly put it through, fold first, collect it, fold bottom to top, put it back through, bottom to top, until we have a nice smooth blend from one colour right the way through to the other. And I'll bring you back when we've got that blend going nicely. When we've got our blend starting to come through, we are going to add our white lines in, because we want a very specific white line where these pieces join. So take your leftover piece of your clay, fold it in half and put it through on setting number 2, because this is setting number 2, so you want this on setting number 2 as well. Now it's not very much and we don't need very much, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to chop down through where those colours are starting to blend, and then cut that into 2 pieces, and I'm going to fold it in half because it's just a very narrow strip we need. And by folding it in half, I can then pinch it and elongate it and then fit it in between those 2 colours. Again, give a slight roll. Now this time, when we start putting it back through and doing our blend, every time you put it through, you need to match the white to the white. Don't worry about the rest of it in between, just match those white stripes. So if you get buckling in the middle, just press it down until it fits in, but constantly match those white stripes each time you put it through, and carry on doing that till you've got a really nice blend and you've got a slight transition, but you've still got 2 nice white stripes. And I'll bring you back when that's done for me. So there we go. So now we've got our nice strong white stripes, a little bit of blurring on either side. So what we're going to do now is we're going to change this into a long piece. So I'm just going to put it back again, matching up those white stripes, fold it roughly in half, and I'm going to put it back down through the pasta machine that way in, so the fold is at the side, to get myself a longer strip on the same setting as we're currently using. And now I'm going to put it back down through to the thinnest usable setting on my pasta machine. And you can either work your way slowly down from one setting, going thinner each time. If, like me, you know that your pasta machine is okay with it, you can go straight down to your thinnest setting, which is what I'm going to do. So I'm going to put mine through pink end first on setting number 9 to give myself a nice long strip. There we go, so that's our nice long strip of clay, and holding it out flat to make sure it doesn't stick to itself to start with, all I'm going to do is I'm going to concertina it. I'm not worried about the end being untidy, and I'm concertinaing it about 1 inch thick, so that's about 2.5 centimetres. Okay, so it's relatively neat for me. Mine are usually more skewiff than that, but I do want this one nice and neat. So I'm going to press it down, press in the ends, and give myself a nice, neat oblong. When you've done that, just chop down through it to give yourself 3 even slices. Take the middle one, turn it upside down and pop it back in. What we're now going to do is to change this shape into a triangular shape, and we're going to do that very easily. This top end, I'm just going to pull those colours in and slightly over the pink bit that's sitting up. Press the ends in as you go, which means if that's one corner, that's a corner, and that's a corner. So you should end up with the lilac on top and then your 2 pink stripes as the corners. So what we need to do now is to find those 3 pieces of clay we put to one side, and each of them in their individual colours roll into a log that's even and the same length as the piece you're working on. Okay, so when you've done those, we're going to insert these into our triangular bit. Now the first thing we're going to do is, with the lilac on mine up to the top, I'm going to pinch this top and really elongate a piece of it. Really quite nice and thin, so it's nicely proud of the top of the triangle. I'm then going to take my roller and curve that top slightly over. Okay, then you can just pop your little roll in there, pull the clay over the top, and that is going to form a new corner. We're going to repeat on this corner of the triangle. It's the pink side, so therefore we're going to use the pink piece. Exactly the same again. Pull up really high to give yourself a nice long piece that's standing proud of the point. Take your roller, pull that over, pop your piece in, pull it down and create effectively a new corner. And then the last piece, although this isn't obviously a pink, when we put this piece in it will link up nicely where that purple is. So exactly the same again. Pull the piece up nice and high. Pull it over on your roller, pop it in and pull the clay over the top. Now don't worry that when you're doing this some of the bits will have pulled away and it will look sort of quite an untidy triangle. All we've got to do now is to force it back down into that triangular shape and reduce it until it's about 4 inches long. And by reducing, all I'm doing is I'm pushing in whilst at the same time gently pulling it longer. Now I've kept it roughly the same on each side, so each side is even. And when you get to about 4 inches, 10 centimetres, just chop down through the middle and we'll see what we've got. So there's the pattern to start with, and this is called a 6-way cane because there's 6 ways you could actually put it together. But what we're going to do to start with, to make it easy for the first one, where those 2 dark dots are, I'm going to put the dark dots together. So you put it together and make sure those bits are evenly lined up. Turn it on its back side and do the same. If you find it difficult to tell where it is because these ends are messy, just chop them till they're neat and then it's easier to match them up. So I'm going to match up there where my dark dots are. And we'll end up with a diamond shaped cane. So we now have 2 choices. We can push it so that this side is flat, or we can push it so that this side is flat. And for the one we're going to do to start with, I'm going to push it so that this side with the dark is flat. And what I mean by that is I'm literally going to put it on the flat board and press these sides down until they go flat. And by doing that, you actually add a little more curve in these 2 pieces as well. So hold the top with your fingers and then just very gently with your other fingers, press down on these 2 ends until it all starts to go flat at the bottom. What you'll find you have as well when you've done that is something that starts to resemble a right-angled cane. So I'm going to emphasise that even more by putting it flat on my tile and reducing it by keeping this back piece upright, and then same with that side when I do it. So flat on the tile, push it up, and I want to reduce this until it's about 3 inches or 7.5 centimetres in length. Enough that you can put 2 pieces together and give yourself a decent amount of cane to work with. So again, try and keep it nice and even along its length, and when you've got it to the right length, chop down, and you should be able to put the 2 parts together and start to create your cane. And as before, marry them as neatly as you can on this end so that all the bits match. And exactly the same on the underneath. Watch where those lines go. Can you see they're the thin lilac lines? So I know I'm going to match those up and match those up. And we now have a square cane. So all we're going to do now is we're going to reduce this down in a square shape. Every so often I will push it onto its neat side to make sure that that stays nice and flat. And just with my fingers, I'm just pressing it down to reduce it and make it longer. When I've got it smaller, I will use the roller to help roll along the length to make sure I've got it nice and square. And I will be keeping an eye on all of these stripes to make sure I'm keeping them as neat and in a row as I can. So I will carry on reducing until I've got it so that each side is about 3/4 of an inch. Once I've got it more or less to the size I want, I'm just going to go along each corner with my thumb and finger and pinch it till I've got a really nice sharp corner point. That makes it much easier when you cut your slices and start to match them together. And then just give it a roll to take away all the indentations of your fingers. Check the sizing to make sure it's still okay. And then in theory we should leave this for certainly half an hour, possibly an hour, just to settle down and relax before we cut it to save it distorting. But you know me, I'm impatient, so I am going to start cutting straight away just to show you the design we've got. So the first thing I'm going to do is I know I've got a bit of distortion on the end here, so I'm just going to take a bit of that off and we can start to see the pattern we're going to start to get. And what I will now do is I will now take off even slices. Doesn't matter how thick you go, consistency is more important than thickness, and I will cut off about 9 slices so I can put it together as a pattern and you can see what we have got. There are slices. Now I've already taken off that bit which I knew was distorted at that end. I'm going to take off a bit which I know will be distorted at that end. I'm going to put that back through the pasta machine on quite a thin setting just to give me a sheet so I can start layering up my slices on a sheet of clay. So on the sheet of baking parchment, so it's easy to manoeuvre, I've got my sheet of scrap clay, which is actually quite a nice sort of marbled pattern, so the back of the piece would look nice as well. And what we're going to do is we're going to simply match up our pieces. Now the first two are easy. By simply pulling the pieces apart, you will find that they match together, and put them together either on your hands or on the sheet, but in such a way so that they sit nicely and match. And then you need to look and see what the tell is. Every piece that you do and every cane you make won't be exact, because this at the end of the day is polymer clay, of course. So look for the tell, the piece that's slightly different, so that when you pick up your piece you can see which way up is orientated. And for me, you've got these nice curves on this corner piece here, and you've got a piece there that's actually quite different from the rest. So this is the piece that I will use as being my tell. So pick those two up, put them together, and they should match on there. As I say, spend a bit of time. You can pull and push them, making sure that they match exactly. If you've got uneven bit, just push it gently back, even it up so that the next slices fit in nicely. And then you can use the tells to start patching the other pieces in. What I will normally do is I will normally lay a piece on top the way up it should be, so that completely is the same as that. And if I then flip it, I know that that is going to be an exact match for that one. When you've got all your pieces roughly in place, just make sure they are nice and square. If you want to, it is easier at times just to chop off the excess if you're happy with the amount of slices you have. And then very gently, just with the edge and corner of your cable needle, knitting needle, whatever tool you're using, just gently roll over the gaps until the clay starts to meet. In typical fashion, my camera stopped recording, so I'd gone on a bit, so I've had to go back and redo this, but I cut another 9 slices. To show you the next step, all I would have done at the next step was to take the greaseproof or tracing or wax paper, which is what I'm using here, and either with your finger or with your roller or with one of these stainless steel soaps, which act quite well because you've got a really nice place to press down. Just press down all over it, nice small circular motions, till you've got all of those slices nicely pressed into each other. And lastly, I'll just give it a roll over. If you're going to use a cutter, then obviously you just cut down through to create whatever look you want. And that is pattern number 1 of the 6 that I'm going to show you. So what I'll do now is I'll take you back to the stage where we made that decision as to which parts to put together, and I will show you the other 5 and how they would all come out for you. So this time, when we put the 2 pieces together, and we put it together so we've got that dark blue in the middle, instead of pressing it down so that the blue bit goes flat, I'm going to press it down so that that bit goes flat. And if you do that and then follow it through till we end up with our square cane, the pattern you'll get will be this. So the cane it creates looks like that, which gives you a pattern like that, which, as you can see, completely different from the first one just by changing that orientation. So those are the first 2 by putting the dark spots together, and what I'll do now is I'll do a couple of different colour combinations and do the other 4 variations for you. So for this colour combination I've used the lemon yellow, the Pacific blue and the peppermint, with the light and the medium on the outside and the dark in the middle. Did exactly the same, made our blend, put it into a triangle, added the little rolls in the middle, and we end up with this. Now previously we'd put the dark dots together and press down flat that side and flat down that side, but this time we're going to put the light ones together, so the yellow ones together, and we'll press down, put those 2 bits together, and the first one we'll do is we'll press yellow side down. So pressing the 2 yellow spots down flat gives you this cane, which comes out like this. And now we'll see what it looks like if we press that side down. Keeping the yellow spots at the top, so pressing the peppermint down gives you this cane, which comes out like this. So in this one I've used lemon yellow, Indian red and the tangerine, and again got it to exactly the same stage as we've done previously. So I'm not going to put the dark colours together, I'm not going to put the light colours together, I'm going to put the medium, which in this case is the tangerine or the mandarin. So first one we'll do is we'll flatten down that side, and this is the pattern you get if you flatten that down. So put the two tangerine sides together and you get this pattern. And then for the last one, we'll flatten down that side and see what pattern you get when you do that. And you get this pattern. So there we are, all 6 patterns, all done out with the little individual squares. And you can see, although there's similarities, so this one sort of similar to this one, and this one sort of similar to this one sort of similar to this one, there are differences when you look carefully. And if you look closely at all the little squares, you can see that they do all look different when you're actually putting them together. So there we go, 6 different ways of doing a single cane with a simple Skinner blend with some added white stripes on the inside. I'm not going to bother showing you how to make this one up into any pendants or bracelets or anything else like that, because I've got loads of tutorials on how to do things. You can always check one of the other ones out, and of course there are amazing polymer clay tutors all over YouTube, all of which have wonderful things you can do and to make up into when you're using the canes. So this one really was just about having fun and experimenting with the cane. And the other thing is, of course, don't let your experiments stop here. So I've done the 6 different ways of doing it, but whereas I used the same colours to put in all these inserts and to circular inserts, think about using different colours, contrasting ones perhaps, even black, all the 3 lots of black going in. So many different things you can do on creating a new cane. I hope you enjoyed that one. As always, thank you so much for watching, and a particular thank you to those of you who subscribe. I really do appreciate it. I think that's it for now. Hopefully I'll see you next time. Bye for now. Bye.